Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys an update on all my banana plants here. So I'm going to go through all my banana plants in this video, give you a tour of them all, tell you what species they are, what varieties they are, how they've been growing for me, and also how I started them from seed or if they've been brought in as plants. So this is my main banana bed. This is now the second summer that I've grown these bananas and they're looking really good actually. A lot of them are over 2 meters in height, so they're getting a really good size. So what I'll do is I'll start off with the sikkimensis bananas because they're some of the biggest ones and I've got quite a few different ones of them. Show you the sikkimensis bananas and then I'll move on to some of my other ones. So the sikkimensis bananas are actually hardy. They're very similar to the other hardy banana, which is Musa Daj, in that they are hardy at the root level and their stem can take a light amount of frost, but the leaves will completely die off with any frost. With all of my bananas, the leaves will always die if there's frost. They can sometimes take a very light frost, but normally they'll be killed off. So this one here is one of the Musa sikkimensis bananas. You can see it's a really nice size. Now unfortunately with the position where I live in a terraced house and I'm an end terrace and we get some very strong winds. These houses are a bit, as you can see, a bit higher than your average roof and the wind howls down through this gap, and right where these bananas are is where the wind blows through. So it's a real wind tunnel at the moment. So the leaves are very ripped. This is also a very windy part of the world in North Scotland, so we get a lot of wind damage. And in fact this one leaf here is probably the first leaf that I've had this year that hasn't been ripped by the wind, although I know by the end of the week it will be ripped. And I'm currently filming this at the beginning of September, so these plants will actually grow quite a bit more. I did find last year the most growth is over the end of summer, beginning of autumn. I think because by then it has lots of leaves. Basically the bananas take about a week to grow a leaf, and by the end of the season there's probably about 6 or 7 leaves on each plant, so there's a big area for photosynthesis. Whereas in the June, July, even though the weather is better for growing, they have a lot less leaves, so they can't absorb as much solar energy from the sun, so they tend to grow a lot at this time of year. But I feel like if I film it right at the end of the season, there's a risk that we could get a frost now in September, so they could be destroyed by frost, and also the winds will come and they'll get completely shredded. So I think they'll probably be looking at their best at the moment, unless we have a really gentle autumn, but they probably will get quite a bit bigger in the next few weeks. So this one here, as I say, is a Musa sikkimensis. I had 4 in this bed last year and I grew all my Musa sikkimensis from seed, and then there's a Musa sikkimensis I've also got growing in my parents' garden, which has the nice kind of tiger stripe effect on the leaves. So unfortunately there's only 2 left in this bed from the 4 that were originally planted, and I'll talk about what happened to the others. But the 2 that are still here are this one here, and there's that one in the background. And because these are all grown from seed, they're all slightly differently genetically, and so some are grown better than others. This one here is one of the best ones so far. It's got that really nice kind of dark colour underneath the leaf. You can see some of the leaves a bit more purpley than others, especially on this younger pup down there. The leaves are actually quite thick as well. Quite a nice strong trunk. And you can see this pup has come up this year, just very recently. Really nice big leaf and quite strong. So that's a really nice sikkimensis. I also have this one here, which is a little bit less wind resistant. You can see that its leaf petioles, a bit where the stem of the leaf attaches to the main stem, are a bit longer. The leaves tend to be a bit thinner, they get a bit more shredded by the wind, even though that one should be in a more sheltered position because you can see it's in the middle of the banana plot, whereas this one's kind of more on the edge. This one does get more shredded, but it's also doing quite well and it's got quite a few pups. It has actually got more pups coming up than the other plant, but they're all a lot smaller. This one only had 2 pups, but you can see that one pup is actually already the size that the mother plant was at this time last year. So they have put on a lot of growth this year. If you consider this plant here was only the size of that pup, and it's now this size, and it has its own pup coming up, and it's got numerous other ones just starting to appear. So these ones have done really well. And then I also had a Musa sikkimensis which was in this position here, but it was even more wind prone than the others. It had very long leaf petioles. It would get absolutely shredded by the wind. This year it grew 5 leaves and every leaf got snapped off within a week of growing, so it just lost more and more energy and eventually died. So that one is the only loss I've had, but there was one other Musa sikkimensis in this bed, and that was planted in the position where this one is now, over here. And this is what's left of that plant. So what happened is the plant actually rotted down to the base. This one was always a lot smaller than the other plants. It didn't grow as big last year as the other Musa sikkimensis, so it's a bit more like a dwarf variety. But in spring, its main trunk was actually in the middle here. It was in the ground, but I dug it up because I thought it was dead. But when I dug it up, I noticed there was small shoots are starting to appear. So what I did is I took it out of the ground. The main central part rotted off. The young shoot came up, and you can see it's been growing away now. And the one thing with this one is it does have a little bit of tiger striping, not very extreme though, just a very tiny amount. So I'll keep that one. I don't know if I'll put it in my border because it seems to be a bit less frost tolerant than the other ones, as it did rot down to the base, but I'll keep that one and I'll see how it does. So now I'll take you over to my parents' garden. I'll show you the Musa sikkimensis there, and I personally think that's the best one I have out of all of them. It's the biggest and it has the most amount of tiger stripes. So this is my other Musa sikkimensis banana plant. This is actually the one that I think has done the best. It's growing at my parents' house. So it doesn't look like much at the moment. I was hoping to film this before the hard winter came, but we had about -5 here in my parents' garden, -11 at my garden, so all those nice bananas you'll see in the rest of the video are probably looking similar to this at the moment. But basically -5 here, and that's cut it down basically back to the stem, maybe to the ground. But I'll show you some photos of how it did look, and you'll see how much of a nice banana this actually is. So out of all my Musa sikkimensis plants that I've grown from seed, I would say this is by far the nicest. The leaf patterning on this is really nice. It's got that kind of tiger stripe effect on it, which you get on some of the Musa sikkimensis varieties. So it has a really nice kind of stripe patterning on the leaves. This one as well has actually grown the biggest out of all the plants. Although the ground that it's in here isn't the best, I did dig out a small area in which it would compost, but it's going to be in competition with the large buddleia here, and also the large contorted willow, and a bit of the grass as well. So it's not as good a condition as, I say, my garden, but it has grown even better than that. So I don't know if it's to do with the wall being behind it, or if it's because the genetics is slightly better on this one. But anyway, it's grown really well. It was around 2 to 3 meters in height. I think it was well over 2 meters. You can see that the stem itself is actually about 1.70 meters in height at the moment, and the leaves were much longer than that. The base as well, it got really thick. We have mulched it around the base so you can't see the full thickness. That's to protect the roots, but you can see here it's already getting quite thick, and much further down it gets an awful lot thicker as well. Really good strong trunk on this one, and also it's had loads of little young pops coming up as well. So you can see even these have got to a decent height, and considering it's been less than 2 years this plant's been growing for, it's been 2 growing seasons, and it's already got to about 3 meters in height. It's done really well in this position. Now in my parents' garden here, I don't tend to protect it as well because they're near the coast. -5 is about as cold as they're really going to get here, maybe -8 in an exceptional year. My garden can get down to -15, so my garden I wrap them up with extra protection, but this one here just gets a bit of mulch around the base, and that's about it. But as I say, this is my favourite Musa sikkimensis, mainly because of how nice the leaves look, but also because it just seems to grow much better than my other plants. So next spring what I'll be doing is some of these babies that are coming up now, I'll be separating them out. I'll be probably planting 1 or 2 of them in my garden, and just see how they do growing in the conditions of my garden, and see if they'll be growing better than the other Musa sikkimensis I have. And although this is the best growing out of all my Musa sikkimensis, it's not quite as good as the Helen's hybrid, Musa sikkimensis hybrid, which is by far the fastest growing one. But as I say, this has that nice tiger stripe effect, so I think this is probably my favourite banana at the moment. So I'll take you back now to my garden, back a couple of months when everything's still green, and I'll show you the rest of my bananas. So related to the Musa sikkimensis, I have quite a few different hybrids of Musa sikkimensis as well. The best one is this one here, but I'll show you that one in a minute. This has grown absolutely fantastic. But all these Musa sikkimensis I'll show you now have grown this year from seed, so they're a lot smaller than the ones that you've seen in the ground, which are now in their at the end of their second growing season. So at the bottom here I've got a Daj giant. This one's been struggling a bit in the pot. It's got a nice kind of purple colour underneath, and what also sets it apart from the other Musa sikkimensis is it has this kind of nice kind of blue colour on the stem. This one has struggled a bit. I'll show you one that I've planted in the ground which is doing much better. That's this one here. Again, it's not doing as well as some of the plants, but considering this is its first year in the ground, it is doing about as well as these two did in their first year, so I'm quite happy with the performance so far. The main difference, I would say, is the kind of the glaucous colour that you get on the stem there, and the fact that it's already throwing up some pups. You can see there's already 2 pups in there, and considering this is such a small plant, that's quite unusual compared to my sikkimensis, because the sikkimensis, they tend to wait at least a year until they start throwing up pups, and they're a lot older and a lot bigger until they throw up pups. But this Musa Daj giant is throwing up pups. So it'll be interesting to see how that does. It shouldn't be quite as hardy as sikkimensis, but it's pretty similar. And then another one we've got which isn't doing particularly well is the Musa sikkimensis hybrid, which is hybridized with paradisiaca. So I put the name on the screen because I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. This one has really been suffering quite badly. You can see it's not grown that big. It's got a very tall thin stem, and the leaves are quite ugly looking. There is a bit of purpling underneath, but generally it's just not done very well. So I don't know, I'll try and keep that one over winter, see how it does next year, but it's not looking too hopeful for that one. But I'll now show you my Musa sikkimensis hybrid, which has done the best, and that's Helen's hybrid. This one is here, and considering this has grown from seed from this year, is already almost as big as the Musa sikkimensis, which are in their second year of growth. So this has potential to grow really big, really fast. It's definitely my best banana plant so far. I'm really happy with how it's doing, and there's a lot of features about it which I like over the normal sikkimensis. So as I say, some people say this is a separate species, other people say it's a Musa sikkimensis hybrid. This one germinated, I think it was around February time, a bit earlier than my other bananas here. But even though I had a small head start on these two and the Daj giant over there, you can see the amount of growth it's grown has been phenomenal. Even though it had a small head start, it doesn't count for how much it's grown this year. So the thing that really makes it different from the sikkimensis is the thickness of the stem and the speed of growth. You can see with these that the stem is nice and thick with the Musa sikkimensis, and each leaf is a bit higher than the last, but it's not by a huge amount. Whereas with this Helen's hybrid, you can see each leaf is substantially higher than the previous one. It's quite a thin stem as well, it's got some really rapid growth. And despite being quite a thin stem, it actually feels almost as secure as the thicker stems. And like the Daj giant one, it's also got this nice glue effect on the stem. Some of it's rubbed off, so it's less obvious. Other areas like around here, you can really see there's that nice glaucous appearance. So that adds to the interest. It also has some of that nice dark colour underneath. It has faded a bit now because these leaves are now growing at a time of year when the sun isn't as strong, but when the sun was strong, this had a really dark purple colour. You can see a bit on this new one as well. That lovely colour. The leaves are also really big for the size of the plant. These leaves are almost as big as these Musa sikkimensis leaves. In fact, I think they are actually wider already than the Musa sikkimensis leaves. So it's really doing very well, throwing out lots of new growth, and it's also got some sizable children coming up, or pups. You can see this one here. This is one of the pups already, and that leaf on that pup is already considerable size, and it actually has two more pups coming up from down here. See, there's that leaf and the pup there, and there is actually another one just around the back, but it's kind of hard to show. So it's sizing up nicely. It's also starting to get a bit of a thicker stem at the base, but it's still thinner than a sikkimensis. And one interesting thing is the other sikkimensis I have, their leaves, they either snap or they die off quite early on, so you get a lot of bare stem at the base. This one, it just seems to keep its leaves. Some of these leaves are really old, but it still kept them. Even though they're peeling away from the original stem, they're still alive. So you can see there, all those leaves at the base, continuing to keep them as it grows up. So it's got a bit more leaf area than the sikkimensis. I'll be interested to see how it deals with wind. So far it's not too bad, but considering the thinner stem, I feel like it might not be quite as wind resistant as some of the Musa sikkimensis plants, but definitely my favourite. This is Helen's hybrid banana. Fantastic looking leaves, really nice dark green colour. They're actually slightly darker green than my sikkimensis ones, and it also has that nice purpley colour underneath, and it has that nice waxy bloom, giving it that glaucous colour on the stem. So definitely my favourite one so far. So continuing with the Musa theme, I'd like to show you my last Musa plant, which is my Musa basjoo, which is probably the best known hardy banana there is, and probably one of the hardiest. Now it will be quite hard for me to show you this because it is right in the middle now, and it hasn't been growing as fast as the sikkimensis plants, but this is the Musa basjoo here. Now I found that this doesn't grow as well as sikkimensis for me. Although it is hardier during the winter, the summer growth is slower, and it also seems to grow a tiny bit slower in the colder conditions at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, where the sikkimensis seems to keep growing. It doesn't seem to mind the cold too much as long as it's not really frosty. Then when the hard frost comes, this is slightly more frost tolerant, but it's only the stem that's more frost tolerant. The leaves are just about the same. And as you can see, it's not anywhere near as big as the other ones. I think part of the reason is how many pups it has. It's kind of hard to show from here, but there's a huge number of pups. You can see this one on the left here is almost the same size as the mother plant. Has nice big leaves. I'll take you underneath now and give you a better show of how many pups there are. So you can see here, this is the base of the plant. There's 3 large pups. I have already taken out the largest one already. There was one that was slightly bigger than that. And then you can see the base is a nice thick stem. It is quite a sturdy plant, and there's actually some, you can see there's the small pup just there. There's some really small pups coming up as well, so there's probably 5 or 6 in total. So I think a lot of the energy from this Musa basjoo is going into pups and it isn't staying in the main growing point, so that's why the plant is a bit smaller. and it has been struggling a little bit compared with the sikkimensis. The leaves have been a bit smaller, but you can see this latest leaf here is getting much bigger, and it is starting to size up, so it's still growing well. But if I come back a little bit, you'll be able to see, compared with the Musa sikkimensis, it's getting a bit dwarfed in there, and it's just not growing quite as well. I think that is a combination of genetics. It's just not as suited to my climate, but also it tends to put a lot more of its energy into its pups. It slows the mother plant's growth down a bit by doing that. Instead of putting all its growth into the one point, it distributes it throughout all its pups. I'll just quickly show you here, this was the pup that I separated from it already. Now this was the biggest when I first separated it, but as it was stunted from being separated, it has slowed down and is now one of the smaller ones. But you can see here, it's taking off all right now. It did spend a few weeks of not really growing leaves. Its roots are now really well established, and it's starting to grow quite happily. The roots are actually surprisingly established now. You can see there, loads of nice big healthy roots. It's looking really good. So I've got a nice established banana plant there, and I can choose to either plant that somewhere else in my garden or maybe give it away to a friend or something, but it's looking quite good, so that'll probably overwinter okay as long as I keep the roots away from frost. So that's all my hardy Musa bananas. There, as I say, are all hardy down to the root level. I just need to insulate the stem if I want to make sure that the stem survives each winter, but the roots themselves, as long as there's mulch on the ground, they can probably survive -10, -15, and they should be okay. But this here is an Ensete banana, so it's not technically a banana, it is in a different genus. It's an Ensete genus instead of the Musa genus. This does grow very differently to the other bananas, even though superficially it looks quite similar. So the way that it differs is with Musa bananas, they tend to have quite a large corm underground, and nearly all of their energy is stored in that corm underground. With the Ensete here, most of their energy is actually stored in the stem and also in a corm, but the corm tends to be above ground or just around ground level. So you can see here we've got this really big thick stem which is storing all the energy. Another thing that makes this different is this doesn't send off any pups. So with the Musa plants, they all send up small pups and you can propagate them easily. With these Ensete, they just stay as that one plant. They don't send up any babies from underground, so they're a little bit more difficult to propagate. And another thing that makes them different as well is with the Musa, they get most of their height through the stem. With the Ensete, it gets most of its height through its leaves. So the stem on Ensetes, they grow very fat. They don't grow particularly high, although they can do if given enough time. And it's the leaves that give them the height. So you can see here the stem is very low there, but the leaves themselves, they can be several meters tall, whereas the Musa, it's the stems that give it the height. And these aren't fully hardy either. These actually do tolerate low temperatures very well because they come from highland areas in Ethiopia, where temperatures over the summer are surprisingly cool, and they do get very close to freezing quite regularly. But any kind of hard frost or long cold spell below zero, these will normally succumb to it and die because everything is above ground. It's not really well insulated and it can't survive long frosts. So what I have to do with these plants is dig them up and keep them indoors without any leaves and without any roots, and they actually dry store really well because they have so much water stored in their stems. You don't need to water them, make them go dormant, and they just kind of keep it like a corm or a tuber, and then you can start them again next year by planting them in the ground. And that's what I did with this one. I have two like this, and these have grown really well. I'll show you from this different angle as well. It's kind of hard to get a scale of how big these plants are, but if you look at my greenhouse, this is a pretty standard greenhouse. I think the roof ridge is over 2 meters high, but not a huge amount over 2 meters, so that can give you a bit of a scale of how big these bananas are and how big this Ensete is. One of the things I really like about the Ensete, and this one is an Ensete ventricosum. All my Ensetes are Ensete ventricosum, which is the biggest variety you can get, which can actually get taller and bigger than any of the hardy Musa plants, but it's just difficult to get it that size in the UK or a cold temperate place, because once it gets over a certain size, the corm gets so heavy, it can easily get over 100 kilograms. You can't then easily take it inside and look after it. So normally these plants get to a certain size and they just get a bit too big to be moving around and protecting. But what I do like about these Ensetes is the leaves are much bigger than any of the Musa, and they're also really sturdy. So these haven't got barely any wind damage at all. We did have some 56-mile-an-hour gusts earlier in the summer. You can see with the Musa, several of these leaves are snapped off here, hanging down, or they've been completely shredded and damaged. But even these older ones on this Ensete here, they just have some minor tears, but they never ever seem to completely lose a leaf, or certainly not in 50-60-mile-an-hour winds. Maybe stronger they would, but they're much more resistant to wind, and so they do seem to do a lot better in my garden than the Musas. They also grow a lot faster as well. they seem to put a lot more energy into the leaves, and they just grow much bigger leaves, so I do get much more rapid growth. So what I'll do now is I'll show you my other one in the front garden, and I say these are all Ensete ventricosum. The variety of this type is large seed form, so the seeds are a lot bigger than your normal Ensete ventricosum bananas, so they start off germinating quite quickly, and also I think the overall plant is slightly bigger than the straight species as well. So this is my other Ensete ventricosum. This is grown in my front garden, so it's a lot windier here, but again, hasn't been too badly damaged by the winds. It's looking quite good. Now, because these are grown from seed, they do tend to have a slight difference in their genetics, and I can tell that they are slightly different. So that one I just showed you tends to have a taller stem and shorter leaves. This one tends to have a smaller, thicker stem. You can see the stem really isn't that big compared with the rest of the plant, but the leaves are absolutely huge. This one has much bigger leaves than the one I showed you at the back of the garden. You see there we've got some really long leaves starting to form, and I'll take you around this side to give you a better show of some of those new leaves. So this is still sizing up. These leaves will get much bigger. My Musa sikkimensis, when they're at their full size, their leaves won't be a huge amount bigger than what this leaf is now. These leaves are going to get much bigger. You can see this new one here is already a lot bigger than some of the previous leaves. So this Ensete plant will get absolutely enormous, the leaves, eventually. Maybe not this year, but maybe in a few years' time, these could be getting 4, 5, 6 meters in length, the individual leaf. And what I find quite nice about these is they have that nice glaucous appearance on the leaf, which gives it a bluish tint, and then right next to the bright red stem as well. Just a really nice looking plant. So that's my Ensete ventricosum, growing really well for me at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how much bigger it gets by the end of the summer, but at the moment I'm really happy with the progress. So the other banana I'd like to show you, or Ensete anyway, is an Ensete ventricosum again, but this is the Maurelii variety. This is the most common one that most people know about or see growing. It has that really nice bronze effect to the leaf, so it's a bit more interesting in its coloration. It doesn't grow quite as quick or quite as big as the straight species, but it can still get to a really large size and bigger than most of your Musa hardy bananas if you can keep it growing year after year. So this one I actually had one small pup last year. I grew on, I then split the plant in half and destroyed the growing point to then cause it to grow lots of new shoots from its corm. I then separated them all out, and this is one of the babies from that. So I did make a video about it. If you want to see that, I'll put a link in for it. But you can basically separate Ensetes by killing off the growing point and then forcing it to grow lots of new growing points, and then you separate all those small growing points to get new plants. So this is the biggest one so far. You can see there's a lot of little kind of like pups coming up, which is, as I say, it doesn't naturally happen with Ensete, but if you destroy the growing point, you will get that. And I'll show you some pictures of the one I had last year, which was substantially larger than this. And sometimes you can get quite a variation in colour of the leaf, depends how much sunlight it gets and time of year, but sometimes you can get some really dark maroon ones. So what I'll do now is I'll take you to the back garden where I've got all my other ones that I've separated recently. So these are all my other Ensete ventricosums that I've separated. These are the Maurelii variety that I separated from that one original plant. So you can easily get 100 plants or more from one plant. You can see a lot of these are individual plants, but some of them are small clusters of numerous plants together. And I've got some of the original corm in this one here, and as you can see there's numerous new plants coming up. So I was really happy with how these separated. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with all these plants. They are a little bit tricky to overwinter. As I say, you have to store them inside as a dry storage method instead of just growing them out in the garden. So I'm not too sure what I'll do with all these Ensetes. I don't know where I'm going to grow them all next year, but if I can overwinter most of them, I'll probably make some kind of Ensete ventricosum Maurelii display somewhere in the garden. So that's all for this video. Hopefully you guys found it interesting to see my banana collection this year. As you can see, they're substantially bigger than they were last year. Last year I think they were only around about 1 meter in height. This year they're over 2 meters in height. This will be the last specific tour for this year on my banana plant collection, but what I will be doing is I'll be doing a tropical garden tour at the end of the season, probably in October time. Or if we have early frosts, it might be a lot earlier. Sometimes we can have frosts at the beginning of September. So a couple of days ago, for example, we only had 6 degrees in the morning, so it's already starting to get cold. But some years it can be late as October or November till we have the hard frosts. So I might have another week of growth for my plants, or I might have a couple more months of growth. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'd like to give the tour of the tropical garden towards the end of the season when it's in its full growth. That'll be at its full size. So in that video you'll also see the bananas again, which should be a good bit taller with 2 or 3 more leaves, although they might be more ripped as the autumn storms come in. I'll also show some of my gingers. You can see a hedychium over there which is in flower. I've also got things like my paulownia tree at the back, and I've got various other kind of tropicals like hardy begonias and things planted around. And I've got plants like this giant ricinus over here, the giant castor oil plant, which I can also show in the next update. But that's all for now for the bananas. I'll see you guys in my end of year update of the garden towards October time.